Hey guys, it's Lauren Egan here at the Bulwark. There's been a lot of political news this week out of Montana, and I'm joined today by Ryan Busse to talk through it all. Ryan is running the Democratic primary for Congress in Montana's 1st district, which is currently represented by Republican Ryan Zinke. But Zinke announced earlier this week that he's retiring, and just a few days after Zinke said he wouldn't run again, Montana Senator Steve Daines also said that he was going to retire. So there's a lot of shakeup going on in Montana politics this week. Ryan, just really quickly, I want to get your reaction to these pair of retirement announcements. Were you surprised? What's been the reaction from folks on the ground?
Who knew Montana was the center of the political universe this week?
I know,
Holy
right?
smokes. Yeah, they're dropping like flies out here. Yeah, it was honestly, it was the Zinke thing was not super shocking. It had been rumored that his heart really wasn't in it, and I had personally suspected that something might be up. So it was a little surprising, but not shocking. The Daines thing, a U.S. senator, a sitting U.S. senator with seniority, pulls that kind of. And for those who don't know, he waited until 4 minutes before the filing deadline, sneaks in his handpicked successor, I guess, who they've coordinated, a U.S. attorney who nobody in the state knows. There aren't 10 people in the state who knows who this guy is. Slipped him in last second. And also because of the last minute thing, lots of Dems didn't file to run. They thought, it would be tough to run against a sitting U.S. senator. So it's quite a shakeup. And the right side of the Republican Party pretty hot about this because it, sort of deprives everybody of democracy here. So yeah, it's been quite a thing.
Yeah, incredibly democratic of him.
Oh yeah.
I want to talk about your political background a little bit. You ran for governor in 2024 and lost.
Yeah.
I'm curious what challenges you saw running statewide as a Democrat, because this is the place where Democrats used to win. Obviously, there was Governor Steve Bulwark. John Tester was a senator from Montana. What do you think has changed in the past couple of years?
Yeah, so I guess everybody watching this, I want to give you a little bit of hope. And I know there are varying outlooks about hope or despair on the Bulwark team, but I'm going to be on Team Hopium here
on
for
the
a minute.
hope side. There you go.
I'm going to be on Team Hopium. Look, 2 years ago when I ran, Senator John Tester ran then too. This was the most expensive per capita race in the history of the nation, that Senate race was, and it totally nationalized everything here. $321 per voter was spent on that race. I mean, that is an astounding sum of money. The closest comparable that same year was Ohio at $44 per year. And what that spending did to the electorate here, combined with the Biden mess, the Harris mess, all of the nationalization, there was no local politics. There were no issue politics. It was full on national, superheated culture war all the time, every day, like never stopped. As an illustration, I like to do, I'm kind of a sicko like this. I like to do right-wing talk radio. So I'll just get on the radio and just take calls on right-wing radio. And 2 years ago, every call that came in or every other call was like, kids in bathrooms and trans kids in sports, just like a nonstop diatribe of the culture war traps that were out there. And we did 187 events that year. I was in people's homes. I was in their breweries with them. And I never once sensed that the voters really were that sort of partisan energized. I didn't feel like this place that elected Democrats forever had really changed. So with the people, it didn't feel any different. But once they got in a political environment, like on talk radio or something, it totally changed. So fast forward to now, 2 years later, I do the same talk radio deal 10 days ago. And this should tell, Bulwark folks what's going on. The first call that comes in, Elizabeth, lifelong Republican. She can't take the corruption anymore. This crypto stuff's killing her. The next person, I think his name is Bob, lifelong Republican. What's wrong with the Epstein files? Well, why won't they release the Epstein files? Like goes off. The next caller, some old guy from Hamilton, Montana. It's like, I don't know what to do, but I can't afford my health care. And it's an hour of that. So 2 years ago, total nationalized culture war craziness to now people's lived experience and what they're energized about is like our stuff. And I think that portends very well for what's going to happen in November.
On the culture war stuff, do you feel like there's a lesson for Democrats to learn there? Because I hear you that that's probably not going to be the motivating factor in this cycle. Obviously, the political environment has changed dramatically. But in tough years for Democrats, that is a card that Republicans consistently play. So Is there a lesson to be learned, do you think, for the Democratic Party? Like if you could tell national Democrats to do anything to help make Montana Democrats more successful long-term, more palatable in a state like Montana, what would that be?
I think, and I do think there's some lessons to be learned. Look, at least when times are super good or the economy feels, fantastic and people aren't losing their healthcare, the like culture warring works. It does. We've seen it. It's elected Donald Trump twice and damn near elected him the middle time. I think what Democrats need to do is nominate candidates and run people like me that don't give don't give the Republicans a place to grab onto. Right? You look at this Afton-Bain race in Tennessee right before Christmas. It was a Trump plus 16 district, and I met Bain, and she's super impressive. Like she's a spark plug. You don't want to get in her way. As a candidate, as a person, she's impressive, and she was only polling like 2 points down in a Trump plus 16 district, right? So everybody thinks she's going to win. But then as the Republicans figure out, oh, wait, there's culture war places to get a hold of her. She had cheered defunding police. She had celebrated like burning down police stations, like this stuff that works. They got a hold of her. They swung her around. She lost by 9.5. Still over performance, but there was a place to get a hold of her. Me, I'm a white dude, sold guns, drives trucks, drinks beer, cusses too much. Like it's hard to get a hold of me. It's not that I'm not progressive, because I believe it's time for universal health care. And I believe that even Republicans believe it's time for universal health care. But the culture warring places, it's hard to get a hold of me. And I think running candidates like that look and feel like the district's important.
Yeah, I live in Nashville, so I was very interested in Afton's race. But you brought up guns, and I want to talk about that part of your background. You left your position as vice president of sales for a firearm producer, and you wrote a book about the gun industry and your kind of break and disillusionment with the firearms industry in 2021. You talked to me about that breaking point that you had. Walk us through why you got there, why you wrote this book, and kind of where you land on this.
Yeah, so my experience in the firearms industry, it really, for me, was foretelling what happened in our political world. I got in. I was raised on a ranch. I'm a ranch kid, ranch and farm, and hunting and shooting for me was like the best part of my life. And so after I graduated from college, I'm thinking, I'm going to go do this thing that I love. And I got into the gun industry, and for a while it was a dream for me. I get to hunt and shoot, but responsibility. Where I grew up, my father's best friend was killed by this guy, and my father's best friend's father was killed by this guy when he was 16 with a gun. So like my family always understood what responsible gun ownership meant and what the implications are if you weren't responsible. That was deeply ingrained in my childhood, and it was deeply ingrained in the gun industry for a long time when I was there. And then about halfway through, I started figuring out, wait, the industry isn't just building and selling these things that I like to use when I'm hunting or shooting. And I do this with my kids now. I'm proud of that. But it's also fomenting this dangerous, like political radicalization. It's splitting the country. It's using something that's important to me and creating these really dangerous radicals. I started to see that NRA-ism happening through the industry. And I had this kind of bifurcated existence where I was proud of owning and selling guns and working for a company, and really troubled about what the industry I was in was doing. And I could do both of those for a while, but as it got further along in my career and the radicalization just got way worse, I just couldn't feed what the industry was doing anymore. And so I did something no career coach would ever say to do. At 50 years old, at the peak of my career, I quit. Neither my wife or I were born with any money or inherited any money. And so whatever financial stability we had, that was out the door. Took lots of death threats. My kids took death threats. Sarah took death threats. I did. We worried about going to the grocery store. But I wrote that book because I thought the world needs to know that radicalization and irresponsibility is a bad thing. And so I did that. And I still am a proud gun owner, hunt and shoot with my kids all the time, proud of the gun company I helped build. And I'm super troubled about the radicalization that's spilled out of the industry.
A lot of your public profile is kind of tied around your break with the gun industry. And I'm curious, on the one hand, you still talk about how hunting is a big part of your life, but do you think that this break is a politics that can sell in Montana? Or do you think that, like, talk to me about how you kind of view the politics of this in the state?
Yeah, good question. So Montana has the highest percentage of gun owners any state in the union. 67.5% of adults in Montana own guns. It's high. But I don't know, I shouldn't say none, but I virtually no Montanans I know that don't think being responsible, doing the right thing, goes hand in hand with that kind of freedom. I mean, it is an immense sort of powerful freedom. Few things that you do in your life have the potential ramifications to other citizens like owning a gun. And for instance, here you can't hunt, and most people do hunt. I'm a hunter. We primarily eat wild game in our house. I'm proud of that. But you cannot be a hunter in this state if you don't take a hunter safety course, including a gun safety course. You cannot obtain a hunting license. Nobody in Montana thinks that that's a bad idea. So the balancing of responsibility with freedom is something I think everybody here cares about. Everybody I know does. And one thing that I think has brought that home, this incredibly horrific thing in Minneapolis, and I know Tim and everybody else is very exercised about this, and they should, but we saw right there what irresponsibility with guns versus responsibility with guns is. And most people in Montana see themselves as Preddy, not as those ICE agents. The Trump administration sees gun ownership as those ICE agents taking your rights away from them. And if you doubt me, just look at Trump's words. You can't bring a gun to a protest. All these things that he and Kash Patel and everybody said, well, that's news to every gun owner in Montana. And so I think that those sorts of things really highlight the radicalization that I was warning about. And they've got the attention of gun owners here.
I want to talk a little bit about some Senate news out of Montana. As I mentioned up top, Steve Daines is retiring. And University of Montana President Seth Bodnar announced that he's going to run as an independent candidate.
Yep.
Senator John Tester, the former Democratic senator, reportedly encouraged him to get in the race, but not as a Democrat, basically saying that you can't win with a D next to your name statewide. I'm curious if you agree with Tester's assessment on that and what you kind of make of this shakeup.
So I'll start with the shakeup first. I know all the folks in the race. I know Seth. I know Riley Neal, Democrat running. I don't know this Republican running because not many people know him since he was slipped in there with 4 minutes to go. I think there's an argument that being an independent gets you some votes, at least in initial voting, at least in initial polling, right? On paper, it looks good. I got to tell you, I know, like John ran a tough race. A 3-term senator shouldn't lose. I get where he's coming from. I think 2024 was a bit of an aberration just because of the Biden stuff, the Trump stuff. Do I believe that a Dem can't win statewide in Montana? No, I don't. I don't believe that. I also don't think it's easy. And I also don't think you can't do it if you don't take on the national party, because there are things that the national party does or stands for or styles that they have that they just don't jive out here. So I think there's an artful way to do it. I mean, I'm doing it. For instance, universal health care. I mean, a big impediment to universal health care. Yeah, it's Republicans, but there's a ton of Democrats standing in the way. And people know that. And when I mentioned this on the trail, look, if there are Democrats in the way, put a frickin' elbow in them, get them out of the way. And I'm telling you, the rooms erupt. And so there's a way to do it and run as a Democrat without running as a national Democrat, because Montana Democrats aren't really national Democrats. I think that's the way to win statewide. Who knows with Daines getting out, it's just completely thrown everything up in the air. I don't know where it's going to land. I do think the seat's big time in play right now, though. With him jumping out, it's going to be big time.
So it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I have this wrong, maybe like embracing some more of economic populism combined with cultural moderation is kind of the recipe for success in a state like Montana. Is that how you're viewing it? Yeah,
I think one thing I would say, and I have said this on the trail, Republicans are pretty good at setting culture war traps. Democrats been damn good at stepping in them. We need to step around them. It's not that every single person in this state, in this country, doesn't deserve personal dignity. They do, but every single person deserves to be able to buy a house or to get health care. Or, those are 100% issues. And they're 100%, circumstance. I have 2 boys 18 and 21. And I'm really worried that they're not going to get a chance to live in this state that I love so much. Montana, by the way, is the least affordable housing state in the country. The least. It's worse than California. On a per capita, you compare income versus housing expense. It's horrible. And working people, they can't buy a house here. A lot of working people have to drive 2-3 hours to work because they have to, get some rental place out in the country. They can't afford to live or work in Missoula or Bozeman. It's a rough existence, and those sorts of issues cross all partisan all levels, and they really usurp all these culture war things. And I think Democrats need to just zero in on that kind of stuff.
Before I let you go, you are running in a primary, and Sam Forstag, who's a smoke jumper and union leader, has gotten some buzz too. I'm curious what you view as the main distinctions between you two, and what your path to the nomination is.
Yeah, we feel pretty good about where I am. I'm the only candidate in this thing that's run a general election race, a statewide race. I got really good name recognition, especially in the district here, and I think folks they understand what's at stake in this race. I've got a history of sacrificing, of, I hope, being a pretty good moral leader, integrity. And I think people in Montana, especially in Western Montana, they know how important this race is for our state. But the truth is, there could be election interference across the country. In fact, I think there probably is going to be of some sort. And I think it will probably happen in blue cities, blue states. And so some of these seats that we count as shoe-in winnables in other places may not be. Who knows what they pull? And I'm running like this seat may be the one that matters to the House majority. It's up in the list already, and with Zinke jumping out, it's going to be high on the list. And I think voters understand it's not time to take a flyer. It's time to elect somebody really serious, and that's who we are.
All right, Ryan, appreciate you joining, and come back and keep us updated on Montana politics.
You guys keep up the good work. Love it all. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.